What's up, everybody? Welcome back. It's been a day. Most of you know I'm leaving tomorrow for a little vacation, which is nice. So I banked a video for you guys to watch tomorrow. John's got to make some edits on it. It's really interesting. So you got to stick around, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you get notified when that one pops tomorrow at some point. I don't know when. We have a first ever thing that we are trying and doing in today's video that's going to be kind of funny and feel a little bit like Inception. Um, yes, everybody always comments when I'm wearing like a jacket or something. Is when I actually look kind of like a lawyer. Got a trial coming up in a couple weeks, which is one of the reasons it's been so busy. Um, and today we get told that there are all these cases in front of us, and case might now get continued for the 7th time, which sucks because we really want this case to go to trial. But it's been a crazy busy day, but we're here and we made it. And we're going to talk about a topic I find incredibly interesting. And so many of you had questions when you saw this pop, and I saw a lot more questions about it today. And that is how criminal restitution works with civil damages if somebody is suing a criminal defendant that's also been arrested and convicted or pled guilty, how that works. Restitution, as most people know, is something that's ordered as part of the criminal sentencing. So, fines are one thing, court costs are one thing, but restitution is something that goes directly to the victims. If there is no victim, there is no restitution. We're going to talk about what restitution actually is today. If people can also file civil claims against criminal defendants if they get restitution, what the difference is, what you can ask for, what you can collect, things like that. That's going to be the main topic and point of today's video, and I'll answer all of your questions that you have. And we're going to focus it around the Ruby Franke Jody Hildebrandt case, the 8-passenger case, because Kevin Franke, on behalf of his children, filed a motion for the court to stop Jody Hildebrandt from selling her $5 million house. Yes, $5 million. We're going to take a look at that house and the Zillow listing together. We're going to fly through some pictures just so you can get an idea about what this house looks like, which is usually an indication of the fact that this isn't the only money somebody has if they have a $5 million house, usually coming from somebody who is a civil lawyer and looks at collectability as part of the civil cases. Sometimes people have claims against people that are not collectible and it's impossible to go after them. Not impossible, but you don't want to spend a bunch of money to get a piece of paper that says somebody owes you $5 million when they don't have $50, because now you're even more into the negative, throwing good money after bad, as they say. Can't squeeze blood out of a turnip. All of those sayings ring true in civil cases. So that can be an issue. It doesn't seem like we have that issue here, but we are first going to read through the motion for restitution filed by Kevin Franke's attorney on behalf of his kids. Then we're also going to look at the order that the court files. We're going to look at the Zillow listing, and then we're going to compare kind of restitution versus civil damages. And the thing that we've never done before, again, my voice is always going, right? Because I don't stop talking all day, every day. It's not just YouTube, it's in my life. I actually went to one of my nephew's basketball games last night. It was hilarious. I was going wild for him. Everybody's like, who's that dad? I was like, actually, none of these kids are mine. And I was going wild, like funny, having a good time, laughing, cheering, nothing negative, didn't get any fights in the stands or anything like that. They did win and he did play great. So that was awesome. Shout Ethan. So what we're going to do today that we've never done before is, instead of me reading this document, we have a friend who has agreed to allow me to use her beautiful voice, her soothing, amazing voice made for radio and YouTube. She did a video on this earlier today. When I was looking for the documents, I have the documents. I did get them. I did find them. John got them, actually. So I could read them, but why not try something a little different? Why not welcome in our friend, not live, but from her video earlier today, Emily D. Baker. So if you haven't heard her breakdown of this, go check it out. She's the best. I'm sure all of you guys follow her already. I texted her and I was like, hey, Emily, this is a weird request, but can I play your video reading this document in my video so I don't have to read the document, so I can give my voice a rest and we can still work through the document together and listen to it? And everybody's saying EDB. Yes, it is Emily. And she texted back and she's like, absolutely. Feel free. So this is going to be funny. We're going to listen to Emily read this document. I'm sure she'll have some comments along the way that we'll get to react to. Yes, throw the purple hearts up in the chat. Yes, she's the best. I was like, thank you. And I know this was probably weird, but thank you. Brand Lynn. My 7-year-old was assaulted at school yesterday, body slam, face first into the floor. I can't do anything criminally because they are under 10 years old. Can something be done civilly? Yes. Claims can be filed. And again, I'm not giving specific legal advice, but in these types of circumstances, claims can be filed against the school, potentially against teachers or security in the area. Even some claims sometimes for parents on behalf of their children. In certain circumstances, I would definitely consult a civil attorney in your area about this case. Boo to whoever blocked the SNL clip, missed the morning live. Yes, that was so annoying. I don't want to give it too much time, but it was definitely fair use. I just don't know how much I want to fight SNL. There was no monetization on the video. It was a members only video where we broke down and reacted to an SNL clip of the Vegas judge attack. It was so annoying, but whatever. That's behind us. And Emily Baker is in front of us. So here we go. Let's take a listen. We're going to read through these documents together.
Restitution and for ex parte pre-judgment writ of attachment and restraining order. Kevin Franke, father of the minor children victims herein, who were subject.
All right, it sounds a little fast. I was going to try to bump it up, but she already reads fast enough, so we'll just leave it on normal speed.
Of abuse by the defendant in accord with UCA 77-38-9 sub 3A, moves the court on behalf of said children to consider victim restitution in this matter and further to seek from the court an emergency ex parte pre-judgment writ of attachment and or temporary restraining order, restraining the defendant from liquidating, concealing, or transferring her personal assets prior to the establishment of anticipated restitution, and an order regarding the same owing by the defendant to any of said victims.
So basically, it sounds like Emily's about to say something too. They don't want her to be able to hide assets. If she sells her house and puts an asset somewhere else or makes it uncollectible. I don't know if Utah has homestead. I should have looked that up beforehand. I looked up some other stuff in Utah. Florida, you can't take somebody's house civilly. And sometimes you can't criminally either. I don't know how that works in Utah, but if she sells it, pockets the money, then obviously hides it and puts it in something that's uncollectible for the victims in this case, then it could be blocked from restitution. The court can step in, stop her from doing something like that. That's basically what this motion is saying.
Ex parte just means that this is without the defendant.
Emily, what does ex parte mean?
Defendant needing to be present. This individual is asking the court to do this without the defendant, with just the one party, without the other party. 1, Washington County Attorney Eric Clark does not object to this motion. That is the prosecutor. 2, this motion is made in accordance with Utah Code Annotated, and then it lists the sections. And these are the sections for the Crime Victims Restitution Act, list pendants, prejudgment attachment, and other rules of procedure. Facts and argument. The defendant at a hearing before the court on 12/27/23 entered pleas of guilty on 4 separate counts of child abuse, each a second-degree felony. The admission made in conjunction with the entry of the pleas established that the child victims of defendant's aggravated abuse suffered both physical and psychological abuse.
Yeah. Okay. So some important things now to talk about the difference between criminal and civil. So people are telling me Utah is a homestead state, which usually means it's hard to collect somebody's homesteaded house, but regardless, criminal has different rules. Obviously, the judge can step in and do things like this. In civil cases, you can't take somebody's homesteaded house. But if they start moving assets around, sometimes there are things that you can do to pause that, block that, see where the money's going so it doesn't go into a protected asset or something that's hidden. So what she just read there is the children have undergone medical care. This is paragraph 4. The children have undergone medical care and have been subjected to psychological assessments and ongoing mental health treatment in an attempt to assist them in comprehending and recovering from these injuries. The children remain in professional care for the aggravated psychological and emotional injuries suffered. It is clear and admitted that the children suffered immediate and continuing irreparable harm as a result of the crimes perpetrated upon them by this defendant. So what do you have? In civil cases and criminal cases, when somebody pleads guilty, that's why the factual basis is so important. That is a proven fact. That is something that is per se, boom, she loses a civil battery charge every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So that's locked in. So you're going to win on liability that she did, in fact, commit the act of the intentional tort of battery, probably some other intentional torts. We've seen this in Maya, false imprisonment, easily ring that one up, battery, assault, all sorts of things. Okay. Abuse. And so when we look at these two separately, first, we've got to establish the facts. There was physical and psychological abuse. What does that bring with it? Medical treatment and psychological or mental health treatment. Okay. So those are the two, sections that we could have potential medical bills for, right? So when we start to think about restitution and what you can collect in restitution in most jurisdictions criminally, that includes out-of-pocket expenses, medical bills, lost wages, economic damages that you've lost, right? If you had to pay certain things, whether it's medical bills or other things, if you had to buy a special pillow, if you have a neck injury, whatever, a standing desk, if it's a back injury, if you have to pay for mental health counseling, pay for it currently or in the past, this is basically economic out-of-pocket dollars for the past. That's usually what you can recover in criminal restitution, funeral costs, whatever it may be, right? If it's a wrongful death case, things like that. What you can't usually collect in most jurisdictions is money for pain and suffering. Let me know in the chat. Do you guys think these kids suffered and had pain and mental anguish and misery because of what Jody Hildebrandt and Ruby Franke, but Jody Hildebrandt's the defendant here, did to them in this case and admitted to? So when we talk about pain and suffering in civil cases, that's not usually something criminal restitution funds. So even if you say, and even if everybody agrees they suffered and have pain and suffering, you can't collect it in restitution, which is why the civil court exists, right? Because guess what you can get in civil court? You can get lost wages. You can get past economic damages, medical bills, out-of-pocket costs, funeral costs, whatever it may be. But you can also get past pain and suffering. So that's why I expect, if it hasn't already been filed, a civil lawsuit against Jody Hildebrandt. And when looking at her, she seems very collectible. We're about to look at this house and wow, it's nice. So I would expect a civil cause of action. Here's another thing. Sometimes restitution, it doesn't cover everything. There may be some arguments. They may cross out some lines here or there. And when we have that, and they don't give you everything you're asking for, well, guess what? You can ask for it on the civil side. Now, you can't double dip. If the restitution covers a medical bill, you can't also ask for it on the civil side. But there's more. And we'll talk about more of what civil includes and encompasses that criminal restitution does not. But let's keep reading in the motion here.
Yes. 2 counts for each victim in this case, 2 minor Franke children victims, and the counts that were pled to both establish physical and psychological abuse. The children have undergone medical care and have been subjected to psychological assessments and ongoing mental health treatment. Good. I'm very glad that they are receiving care for them both physically and psychologically.
As they should.
It goes on to say, in an attempt to assist them in comprehending and recovering from these injuries. That is going to be a lifelong journey. The children remain in professional care for the aggravated psychological and emotional injuries suffered. On a side note, I hope that the other children are as well. It is clear.
Great point, Emily. And that's another thing. If the other children are not considered criminal victims in this cause of action here, so they can't ask the court for restitution if they're not a victim, guess what? If they suffered, and you can find in the civil statutes ways that family members either, they could have been assaulted and battered by Jody Hildebrandt over the last, I believe the statute of limitations in Utah for negligence claims or intentional torts is 4 years. So it can go back 4 years, even if there's no criminal aspects, they can have civil cause of action. And guess what? The fact that she's admitted to it in this criminal case is going to make it pretty tough for her to fight it in the civil realm. But if they also had to experience it or were in the zone of impact for the children that were abused, then guess what? They could have civil causes of action. And it could be a lot of mental health counseling, pain and suffering, things like that. I see a lot of people saying they're coming from recovery addict. Welcome and thank you. And what's up?
Here and admitted that the children suffered immediate and continuing irreparable harm as a result of the crimes perpetrated upon them by this defendant. By this defendant and their mother. It is generally undisputed that these children will require long-term professional care, certainly extending beyond the time of sentencing on February 20th, 2024, and likely for many years thereafter.
All right, so let's pause there. They will require long-term professional care that will continue past sentencing and thereafter. Emily said the rest of their life. Couldn't agree more. Lifelong trauma and care are what these kids need. Not just care, but they will suffer lifelong pain and suffering. So, how do we deal with that on the criminal side? Because we can all agree, I think everybody here can agree, that they're going to need treatment into the future and that they're going to have pain and suffering in the future. Let me know if you agree with that or if you think it's just going to go away because they sentence these defendants. Well, how do we deal with that? Usually, criminal restitution is not going to award money is the wrong thing, order money for future medical bills. Now, sometimes if you can prove it's absolute and it's not speculative at all, potentially they may give you something, but it's unusual for them to really give you the future medical bills that you're going to need as a victim, that these children victims are going to need. But guess what? In the civil realm, you can ask for and collect future economic damages. You can have a life care plan put together. You can ask these mental health professionals, what do we think the treatment's going to be like for these kids going into the future? How much does that cost? Put a life care plan together, and it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars of treatment, is my guess. Multiple children that you probably can't collect in criminal restitution, but in the civil justice system, where money damages are all you can collect because it's not going to take back what happened to these kids. But that is something that you can ask for and collect, but not just future economic damages. Guess what else you can collect in the future in a civil case? Future pain and suffering, which again, this paragraph makes clear. And I think most of us can agree that's going to happen. They're going to have pain and suffering now, in the past, and into the future. And criminal restitution does not cover that. Does not cover future pain and suffering. So the civil courts is where these kids can collect that. So that's why it's so important to have these two systems of justice, that it's not just one or the other. If you get something from criminal restitution, it doesn't mean you can't file a civil cause of action. But that's not all. I'm going to hold just one more thing that you can get in the civil arena. Actually, there's a couple things you can get in the civil arena still, but let's keep reading through this motion with Emily. Have Emily read this to us like a bedtime story. And we'll continue to talk about the differences and things that you can include. Hold on, let me get to some questions. Kat, they should be able to lien the property and get paid if she sells the home. Sometimes in the criminal process, you can do stuff like that, garnish wages, things like that. Civil cases, it's much harder to do that, although you can in certain circumstances. Not a lien on a homesteaded house, though. Stephanie, so can abusive parents have to pay civilly? Family law, divorce would be wild. So that's why these causes of action are against the non-mom. And there are different implications about children suing their parents. They technically can, especially if there's estrangement and they're no longer in the parent's household. But sometimes it's hard to get, insurance or certain payments if you're a member of the insured or living in the house if you're filed, because sometimes you can get insurance from homeowners insurance for cases like this. Usually has to be negligence and not intentional torts, but there are certain circumstances. That's not what's happening here. They're not suing Ruby Franke. They're just suing Jody Hildebrandt. Can the children have their own attorney independent of Kevin's? Yes, they can. It seems like right now he's doing this on their behalf. I don't know what the status is of the custody and things like that. It could have implications on whether or not he can be their personal representative or their guardian at this point. So we're, going to kind of keep an open mind with that because I don't know the details yet. Are we watching Peter cover Emily covering legal filings? Lawception. It does feel a little bit like Inception. And mostly what she does here is read the document, which is just amazing. It helps us out a ton. Welcome also to the new members, Tempest Teacup and Martha and Liz. Unfortunately, our members only live today has been blocked by SNL. We're seeing if we can get it back up, but we'll see. Yeah, Trisha. So theoretically, that money could also already be going to the children, either in the family law case, custody, trusts, different ways. So again, there's a lot of different things that goes on when it actually is the family member in a familial dispute, which is why we're kind of focusing on Jodi Hildebrandt and the causes of action and claims they would have against her.
I don't disagree. It goes on to say, once the juvenile court matter concludes, presumably and approximately no later than September 2024, the cost for this ongoing critical professional help will fall upon the children and their father. He's presuming that's because their mother will be in prison. Yes. This would be a completely inequitable result that the victims and the victim's family would have to pay for their own treatment for injuries caused by the defendant. There's some new things we learned here. First, that the juvenile court matter, they anticipate going through at least September 2024. For those of you not following this case closely, the juvenile court matter is the custody matter. The divorce matter is separate from that. The children were in and under the care of the state. So the state is currently covering the cost of that mental care. It is my understanding, though the juvenile court proceedings are sealed, that the children legally are still under the care of the state for who has legal custody of them, not their father, not their mother, the state. Whether or not that care has been or their physical guardianship has been given to a sibling is unclear to me, but the ongoing help is being paid for by the state through at least September 2024. It says the cost for this ongoing therapy and treatment is presently unknown to father, but could be established prior to sentencing, which is set for February 20th, 2024. The juvenile court could also provide what the state has been paying for. More importantly, the defendant, remember, he's talking about Jodi Hildebrandt, presently has resources from which this restitution could be funded, but such may not soon be the case. That's a weird way to say that. In that the resources may be liquidated and unavailable for access should the court fail to immediately delay or prevent said liquidation or transfer. Lawyers, sometimes it's simpler to just say the simple things. The defendant would suffer no prejudice by this short delay. Under the Crime Victims Restitution Act, these children victims are entitled to restitution, which will compensate them for the injuries by way of the defendant providing restitution for any and all ongoing treatment of the injuries. The defendant has assets and resources sufficient to assist in the payment of this restitution in the form of real estate, financial accounts, and other personal property. Petitioner discovered that on or about Thursday, January 4th, 2024, defendant has listed for sale her home and real property located in Ivins, Utah, which was at least one location where these crimes were committed against the children. The real property consists of real and personal property belonging to the defendant located in the state of Utah, Washington County, more particularly described below, and then it gives the lot and the address and the rest of it. Upon information and belief, it's also alleged that defendant owns other personal property of value, including automobiles, a side-by-side, is that like a four-wheeler? And at the time of the commission of these crimes had financial accounts, including but not limited to checking, savings, CDs, 401ks, and other such accounts, either in the name of the defendant or being held by other third-party entities for the defendant, which may include but are not limited to Pan Botcher Connections LLC, Connections spelled with an X, or other third-party entities. The property has not been taken for a tax assessment or fine. To petitioner's knowledge, the property has not been seized under writ against the property of the defendant, except for any existing mortgage. To petitioner's knowledge, no other person or entity claims any interest in the property. The listing of the home for sale has a listing price of $5.1 million. Excuse me, am I reading that correctly?
Yes,
Yes, Emily, you've continued to read that correctly. The listing for the sale of the home has a listing price of $5.1 million. It is assumed that there is significant equity in the home. However, without knowledge of the existing mortgage, petitioner is not aware of the exact amount of anticipated profit. This property does not
That just means the house they could owe $5.2 million on it. So selling it for 5.1 doesn't mean they have $5.1 million, but regardless.
Constitute earnings and should not be exempt from the execution upon a judgment being entered. The petitioner is not seeking these orders from the court to hinder, delay, or defraud a creditor of the defendant. This is all boilerplate stuff about whether or not this can be granted. Petitioner would therefore request that a writ be issued ex parte given the listing of the property, and further request that pursuant to statute, defendant be given notice and opportunity to be heard and reply no later than February 19th, 2024, 24 hours prior to the sentencing. Granting this motion would be in the public interest in that it protects victims of crime. And then it's signed by the attorney for.
Okay. So thank you, Emily, for reading that for us. So one other thing before we get to the order that I wanted to say is that in situations where you have civil causes of action, especially intentional torts, right? If we think back to Maya, this is a good example of that. What is another thing that you can get that can sometimes be very large numbers in civil cases that you can't get in criminal restitution? Well, let's take a look at how it works in Utah. Punitive damages to punish wrongdoing, to deter people from acting that way in the future, right? That is what you can get and what these kids can and should get from Jodi Hildebrandt for the egregious conduct that she exhibited. Basis for punitive damage awards. Except as otherwise provided by statute, punitive damages may be awarded only if compensatory or general damages are awarded. That's stuff like mental health counseling, medical bills, lost wages, whatever. It can also be a loss of capacity to earn for these kids if they're so affected by this that they're not going to be able to get jobs or have careers or go to college like they would have or should have been had they not been abused by Jodi Hildebrandt, things like that. Convincing evidence that the acts or omissions of the tortfeasor, that would be Jodi Hildebrandt, are the result of willful and malicious or intentionally fraudulent conduct, or conduct that manifests a knowing and reckless indifference toward and a disregard of the rights of others. What do you guys think? Is it clear, and are you convinced that Jodi Hildebrandt's actions were malicious, were willful, disregarded the rights of others? I think the answer is yes. And I think punitive damages are completely appropriate for this case and for these kids. All right. Next, let's read the order here together. And then we will get to the Zillow listing. All right. Court hereby finds as follows. The father is the parent of the two minor children who are victims of the defendant's crimes in this matter. On December 27th, defendant entered pleas of guilty for 4 separate counts of child abuse. Admission made in conjunction with the entry of the pleas established that the child victims of the defendant's aggravated abuse suffered both physical and psychological abuse and injuries. This is a court finding they did in fact suffer these injuries. Based upon the uncontradicted verification of Miss Franke, the children have undergone medical care, Mr. Franke, medical care and have been subjected to psychological assessments and ongoing medical health treatment in an attempt to assist them in comprehending and recovering from these injuries. So she finds there are damages for which restitution should be paid, and in the future, hopefully civil. The children have undergone medical treatment and subjected to psychological assessment. Did I already read this? In an attempt to assist them in comprehending, understanding, and recovering from the injuries, they remain in professional care for aggravated psychological and emotional injuries suffered. It is clear and admitted that the children suffered immediate and presently irreparable harm as a result of the crimes perpetrated upon them by the defendant. It is generally undisputed these children require long-term professional care. Once the juvenile courts and other things are decided, again, a lot of this is the same what we already read. They're entitled to restitution. Where's the actual order? Here we go. Order. The court hereby issues a pre-judgment writ of attachment to the real property located in Ivins, Utah, more particularly described as follows, and that's the property description. The court further orders that the defendant or her representatives or designates are hereby restrained from signing, disposing of, concealing, transferring said property until the sentencing of the defendant, which is set to occur on February 20th, 2024. Theoretically, she could then sell it after that. But as of right now, halt, pause the sale of this house. Any security requirement or otherwise imposed upon the petitioner is hereby waived in that the petitioner is representative of crime victims who are minor children. A remote preliminary injunction review hearing is set for February 1st, 2024, 9:10 a.m. This writ and temporary restraining order is extended until further order of this court. So basically, this is going to be in place until February 1st. And if Jody Hildebrandt doesn't do anything to prove to the court that they need to pull it, it's going to stay until the sentencing February 20th. So they're pausing the sale of her house. Speaking of her house, let's take a look at what we're talking about here. This is the Zillow listing. $5.3 million. Pretty nice looking house. Let me answer a couple questions here first. Actually, I'll save the questions for after I'm just going to blow through these, but okay, it's a pretty nice house. 10,000 square feet, in case you're wondering. 5 beds, 6 baths. Good feng shui here. I mean, this house is amazing. Beautiful, multi-million-dollar house. They're going to get multi-million dollars for it. Business must be booming, or must have been booming for Jody Hildebrandt. Closets, bedrooms. You get the idea. You get the gist. There are some strange unfinished places that, again, judging from the facts that they admitted to, could have been where some of the crimes were committed. I think that's a fridge in the closet, which is kind of weird. This is like an in-laws suite, I guess, in the garage, or I guess just maybe just garage. Yeah, maybe that's just like a shower outside in the garage. But these rooms are kind of weird and can kind of match some of the descriptions of where the kids may have been tied up. But again, we don't know that. That's just speculation. So anyways, you get the idea. This house is crazy nice, multi-million-dollar house. And I think they should sell it. I think they should get every penny for it eventually. And I think it should all go to the child victims. All right, let's get to a couple questions. Karen, will the money be put in trust for the children? So different states have it set up different ways, but usually if the settlement is over a certain amount, it has to be put in some kind of annuity or trust. There has to be some kind of guardian. We have to put protections in place to make sure parents don't steal money from their kids. Frankly, that's just the truth, because it happens. I've had situations where parents have threatened bar complaints because I wouldn't just give them the money for a lawsuit or something that happened to their children. But courts have to approve these things, or else we see what happened in Girardi and Murdaugh. I guess you could pay off the right people and do it a certain way and maybe get kickbacks. But yes, hopefully with the amounts they should get, the money should be put in trust. From restitution, I don't know. We'll see. But in the civil cases, they should. Peter and EDB are so different in their styles. So when they collab, and especially when they highlight or agree on the same thing, it's worth listening to. Brilliant. Thank you. It's always fun hanging with her and talking to her. Diana, as a 63-year-old who suffered child abuse, I can honestly tell you that it is always a part of your memory and does affect your life. You will never forget. I appreciate you sharing that with us, Diana. And there are tons of scientific studies done and testimony from experts that would corroborate that, and completely agree with that. And we've proven that in civil courts multiple times. Juries understand it. And juries usually don't take kind to the people causing that abuse. Jen, are punitive damages equal to pain and suffering? No. So there's economic damages, which are exactly what they sound like. They're scientific money, receipts you can add up on a piece of paper, lost wages, medical bills, costs of things that you may need to buy, funerals, whatever it may be. That's economic damages. Pain and suffering is mental anguish, the pain you go through, the difficulty it causes you in your life and activities of daily living, the anxiety it may cause you, the inconvenience it may cause you in going to all these medical appointments and the changes you've had to make in your life. That's pain and suffering. Mental anguish, how it's affected you. Punitive damages are purely to punish the wrongdoing. So to punish in this situation, Jodi Hildebrandt, to make sure she doesn't do this in the future. Obviously, she's going to be in prison, but if not, we hit her at her pocketbook. Or as we saw in the Maya situation, Johns Hopkins, to punish that. And so that other similarly situated defendants are deterred from doing the same thing. So in Jay Hatch's situation and Johns Hopkins, other hospitals. In this situation, other people, mothers, mental health counselors. We don't want this to happen. And if you do it, huge money damages and punitive damages are going to come out of your pocket. That's the purpose of punitive damages. That large safe door leads to a prison room. It's weird. Oh my gosh, Peter and EDB, awesome. Why isn't RF named for restitution? Isn't she also culpable? How does this affect KF, RF, division, and settlement? Again, or divorce. The family law case is a totally separate situation. That's why I believe they're just filing these claims against Jodi Hildebrandt. And I think they're going to file civil claims against just Jodi Hildebrandt because it's easier to sue somebody that's not your mom, not in your family, and not, I would think, and again, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. I think Ruby Franke would be fine at this point giving all of her money to her kids. Probably not to her husband, but to her kids. I think she'd be fine giving them all of her money. So maybe they don't need to go through the civil courts or criminal restitution to get that. Netwoman, thank you for gifting 20 new memberships. That should start to get excited already about the February live. Azam, Peter, can minors have their own public attorney? So no, it's not a court-appointed public paid attorney, but they can have guardians appointed who can help them choose an attorney. And the attorneys on cases like this can work for free or for a percentage of the settlement, I should say, on a contingency fee basis. And they don't have to be paid anything up front, but they can collect an amount, a percentage of the settlement paid by Jodi Hildebrandt. All right. I am tired. I am ready to be done with work for today. I am ready to go on vacation. Ravina said, Peter, you really don't understand the culture. She absolutely would not. I don't know. Maybe I don't understand. But anyways, I'm done for today. We do have a video coming out tomorrow. And the first of our series of case-by-case snapshots where I just give a 1-minute overview of a case that you guys are probably already following and know. But for new people or people that jump into a case after it starts, they can always go back for a quick refresher on what's going on with it. John O'Rourke's going to take us out, gifting 10 more memberships. Thank you, John, so much. I appreciate you guys so much for everything you add to the channel, all the content you add, all the questions you ask. You make it fun, even after a long day, even after a long week, even though it's only been 3 days. I appreciate you guys so much. Maybe I'll hit you with some clips from LA when I'm there hanging out with some friends, just relaxing with Whitney, taking a load off, enjoying hopefully the nice weather down there. You guys are the best. Yeah, hit that like button. Angela said there's only 100 likes. That can't be right. There's got to be more than 100 likes. Hit that like button on your way out, everybody. Until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.